Good evening, church. It is another Wednesday evening, which means it is time for our study in Proverbs, as we call it, our WOW time, Wisdom on Wednesdays. I pray and I hope that you are doing well and that you have had a blessed week so far. I hope that the wind is not blowing near as hard as it was yesterday wherever you are, and that you're able to enjoy this beautiful day that our God has blessed us with. I want us to dive right into the lesson tonight and into the scripture. We're going to be in Proverbs chapter 5 this evening. Going to go through the first 14 verses is my goal for this lesson. But before we dive into the text a little bit, I do want to give a little bit of a warning, if you will. I don't know if warning is a good word for it, but anyway, we're going to be talking about adultery tonight from the text. So if you have little ears that are listening that you don't want to maybe hear some of these things, you might be aware of where we're going to be going tonight. Okay, Proverbs chapter 5, starting in verse 1. This is what the proverb writer says, "My son, be attentive to my wisdom. Incline your ear to my understanding." So once again, here we have the proverb writer that is encouraging his son to listen, to be attentive, to pay attention to his wisdom, to incline his ear to his understanding. It almost seems like with what's going to be discussed that the proverb writer here, the father, is not talking to a young son, but maybe an adolescent son, maybe a son that is about to be married, or maybe a son that has just recently been married. And here's his advice to him. Wisdom that he's given him, understanding that he's given to him. So he's encouraging him, pay attention, incline your ear to this. What I am about to say to you is important. Notice verse 2. That you may keep discretion, and your lips may guard knowledge. Okay? So if you're listening to my wisdom, if you're paying attention to the understanding that I am giving to you, keep discretion, and your lips guard knowledge. You know, it's an interesting phrase there about the lips guarding knowledge. You know, last week we talked about at the end of chapter 4 about different body parts and whatnot, but here again we have the lips that are playing an important role as they guard knowledge. They take care of knowledge, if you will. You know that the lips can be a very dangerous thing. The lips can get us in so much trouble, but they can also do so much good. Okay, but notice the same lips that we are talking about here are going to be talked about in verse 3, but they're going to be from a different person. And we can see the danger that comes from our lips. All right, starting in verse 3, we're introduced to the forbidden woman. Okay, it seems like that most likely, my understanding is that this is probably a real woman that is being talked about. It is not the enemy of Lady Wisdom, because the enemy of Lady Wisdom in Proverbs so far has been the Lady of Folly, or the Woman of Folly, if you will. And so it seems like that this is probably a real woman that the proverb writer is giving warning to his son about, someone to stay away from, to be aware of, but not to play with, not to go near at all. Notice what the text says in verse 3. "For the lips of a forbidden woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil." So here's where this adultery begins. Okay, we should mention, you know, adultery is a big topic in the Bible. God knows about adultery because He knows from his own people, that his own people have committed adultery against him. He even put it in the Ten Commandments. I mean, he could have given 1,000 rules and laws to Moses upon that mountain, but he gave 10. And I've heard different people say this, that, if man would have gotten those first 10 right, they wouldn't need all the others that appear in the Bible. And one of those laws is, thou shalt not commit adultery. Oops. Did my King James just come out of me? I don't know why, but when it comes to the Ten Commandments, it seems like maybe the King James is the version to go with. Maybe it has a little more power to it. More modern translation might say, do not commit adultery. Okay, it's very important to God that we do not cheat upon the relationships that we have committed to. God doesn't want us to commit adultery against him. He doesn't want us to fall into the traps and the ways of Satan and of this world, but also to our relationships here on earth, more specifically to the marriage relationship. Whenever we marry someone, we pronounce vows to someone. Whenever I do a marriage ceremony, I do premarital counseling with the couple, and I let them know that the flowers or the gown or the tux or the lighting or the cake or whatever is not the most important part of the wedding. The most important part of the wedding is the vows that you say to one another. And I highly encourage the man and the woman, the bride and the groom, that they come up with their own vows, because these are promises that they are saying to each other. It's not just some generic thing that we say at a wedding that sounds good. Oh, well, you got to say this. No, these are the vows that you want to say to the person that you're supposed to spend the rest of your life with. Okay? But in saying that, Satan tries to use temptation. Are relationships hard? They can be. Are marriage relationships hard? They can be. Do they need to be guarded and taken care of? Yeah, without a doubt. And I think that's what the proverb writer here, Solomon, is trying to get across to his son. Did Solomon know what it was like to have a relationship with a woman? Yeah. How many wives did he have? Hundreds. Not to mention the concubines as well. He knew what it was to have many relationships with different women, and that's not what God intended for man. No, it was one woman and one man in a relationship together as they become one. But sometimes those relationships get hard, especially when Satan is at work, and when Satan tries to cause stumbling to happen. And maybe, especially in families where there's kids involved and different jobs are involved and different social activities and whatnot, sometimes it's easy to grow apart, and especially if there's also stumbling blocks like trouble with finances, troubles with jobs, troubles with the kids, and whatnot. And so here is Solomon, encouraging his son. He says this, for the lips of a forbidden woman drip honey. Okay? Do you see the metaphor that's coming here? Okay, not literally is there a woman standing on the street corner with just honey just dripping from the lips, and a young man's going to go by and go, woo-wee. Wow, I want to leave my wife for that. Do you see the honey that's going down the chin there? No, that's not what we're talking about. It seems like it's her speech that sounds like sweet honey that is dripping from her lips. Notice it's not her body that Solomon talks about that's going to be enticing to the young man. It's her speech. It's what she says. I don't know how many times I've heard of couples that are having trouble, that one cheats on another, that they say, well, this person just understands me. this other person, I can just talk to them about anything and for hours. Do you remember the way it was when you first started dating your husband or your wife, and you could talk to them for hours upon hours, and you just wanted to learn everything that you possibly could, and you could listen to their voice and them speaking and just be like, ah, keep going. Yeah, no, just keep tickling my ears with your wonderful words. And then as the years go by and maybe you get married and they start talking, and maybe for the husband, they have that imaginary hearing aid, or maybe they got a real hearing aid. There, shout out to my best friend Brian. And sometimes they, and you're just not quite listening as well. Well, here's what Solomon is saying, that the forbidden woman, she's going to use that speech that's going to draw you in. All right, it's going to entice your ears. It's going to tickle your ears, and it's like sweet honey that's just dripping from the lips. And notice the other way he describes it here. And her speech is smoother than oil. She's a smooth talker. But notice the contrast in verse 4. But in the end, she is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Ugh. Okay, here you go. Okay, what you think looks like, oh, beautiful, sweet honey, but when you actually taste it, it's going to be bitter to you. You're going to go, honey, that's not what I was expected. That's not what I was hoping for. Remember, her speech is smoother than oil. Think of it this way, maybe as a kid trying to take medicine, and you get the bubble gum flavor or whatever flavor you liked, and it just tickles your throat. It's just going down. Maybe you have a sore throat, and it kind of soothes it a little bit, and you're just like, whew, that was nice. Well, imagine taking that same medicine and you're expecting that smoother than oil, but instead it was sharper than a two-edged sword. So as you're taking that medicine and you're swallowing, it's just stinging everywhere, and it feels like it's just cutting your throat up. And that's what he is saying about this woman. You want to stay away from her, because it's going to look like that honey is dripping from her lips, that her speech is smoother than oil, but really those lips, they're going to be bitter. All right? That speech is going to be sharper than a two-edged sword. It's going to hurt you. It's not going to do you any good. What looks like would satisfy all your desires, it's not. It's a trap. Stay away. Notice verse 5. He now describes her with her feet. He says, her feet go down to death. Her steps follow the path to Sheol. Sheol is the place of the dead. Okay? Her feet go down to death. It leads to destruction. It leads to death. It leads to the place you do not want to go, especially young in your life. You don't want to make this mistake of cheating on the one that you have promised your life to, the one that you have made vows to before God. You do not want to go down this path, because it will not end well for you. Notice verse 6. She does not ponder the path of life. Her ways wander, and she does not know it. Okay? The path of the righteous, the path of those that have wisdom and follow Lady Wisdom, she doesn't follow that path. It's a different path. It's not a path that leads to life. It's the path that leads to death. It is the path that leads to Sheol, the place of the dead. Her ways wander. Remember the straight path that we've been talking about in past lessons with Lady Wisdom? Yeah, this is not the path that she takes. Notice verse 7 with me. And now, O sons, listen to me. Once again, here's the call. Listen. I'm about to say something important to you. You got to listen to this. And do not depart from the words of my mouth. Keep these words. Keep this wisdom. Notice verse 8. Keep your way far from her, and do not go near the door of her house. All right. As you go down the straight path of wisdom and righteousness that leads to God, stay away from the adulteress's house. Stay away from her door. Don't go up to the door. Don't knock on that door. Don't even go near it. I want you to stay as far away from it as you can humanly possibly do it. Don't even give yourself the slightest little temptation to hear those words, to be able to see the honey that is dripping from the lips. No, no. I don't see it. I don't see it. Nope. I know my path. I know what future I want. I know what direction I want to go. And I know with who I want to go on this path with. It is not her that is over there. It is not with someone that is not my spouse. It is not with someone who is not my wife. It's not with the one that God did not give me. Notice verse 9. Lest you give your honor to others and your years to the merciless. Right? It seems like the proverb writer is saying that, this isn't going to end well for you. And here the proverb writer is saying to his son, people are going to find out. It's going to hurt your honor. It's going to hurt your reputation. And for years, it will do it. And notice verse 10, lest strangers take their fill of your strength and your labors go to the house of a foreigner. It almost seems like that the proverb writer here is speaking sexually. If we can say that. Lest strangers take fill of your strength and your labors go to the house of a foreigner. That's not where it belongs. This is a message that every young man needs to hear. This is a message that every young lady needs to hear. Okay, sex is designed by God to be a good thing for a couple who is married to enjoy with each other. It is to strengthen their relationship. It is not something to be shared outside the marriage. You'll take your strength and your labors go to the house of a foreigner. Notice verse 11. And at the end of your life, you groan when your flesh and body are consumed. Okay? It's not a path that's going to lead you to joy and happiness. It's not a path that's going to lead you in righteousness. No, it's a path that's going to, with groans, not groans of goodness either, of pain, of sorrow. Notice verse 12. And you say, how I hated discipline, and my heart despised reproof. Okay? If you follow this path, you'll remember your father tried to warn you. Your father tried to discipline you. Your father tried to mold your heart into what was righteous. Verse 13, I did not listen to the voice of my teachers or incline my ear to my instructors. What sadness there is. Maybe when you stumble and you fall and you think about it afterwards and go, I was warned against this. I was warned not to go down this path. I was warned not to go near that house. I was warned not to knock on that door. I was warned not to listen to those words. I was warned to stay away from this person or these people. But I didn't listen. I didn't incline my ear like my father told me to. Verse 14, I am at the brink of utter ruin in the assembled congregation. Okay, once again, it seems like it's painting the picture a little bit of other people finding out about this and the ruin that comes with that. Imagine the embarrassment that comes with that and people looking at you going, there's that one that cheated on the one that he made his vows to, the one that, that he's supposed to be a partner with. This isn't my favorite lesson in the world, but it's a lesson that is needed in this world. It's a lesson that every young person probably needs to hear, and especially those that are thinking about marriage and making that commitment. Because I'm afraid, even in our day and age, it's not something that is taken very seriously anymore, about being married and about keeping the marriage bed pure and not cheating on one another. And it seems like in our world today, it's more about how can I fulfill my desires. Okay? God wants me to be happy. And if I'm happy with this other person, God's okay with that. No, he's not. It's foolishness. There is somebody else that is whispering in your ear, and it is not God. All right, that's where we're going to end this lesson this week. We'll pick up in verse 15 next week, looking a little bit at the wife instead of the adulteress. So maybe that'll be a little funner to do. I hope y'all have a great week. May God bless you, and remember, God loves you, and follow the path of righteousness. Follow the path of wisdom this week. God bless.